And I mean, with such a wealth of experience, I have to start by asking, in these almost, 15 years, what have been your biggest surprises in getting people to speak up, getting people involved?
It's a great question, Lisa, and I have to say, when I started America Speaks in 1995, the conventional wisdom in the United States was that people would not participate, that they didn't have enough time, that they didn't care enough about the issues, they only cared what happened in their own backyard. So in the early years, the biggest surprise was that when you really invite people into a forum where decision makers are listening, they really want to participate. And very many times now when we hold our 21st century town meetings, we have to turn people away. More people want to come than we can accommodate. So the biggest surprise in the early years was how ready the public is to do this kind of work. Later on, I'd say the biggest surprise is now that we've had a lot of experience, and I'll have to say this in the framework of American politics, but for the last couple decades in the US, we've been very divided ideologically. There's been a big split between the liberal left and the very conservative right. But when you bring Americans together, the whole population, demographically representative, very, very quickly, the radical suggestions, either from the right or from the left, are just taken off the table. Americans move toward the center. They want to make a collective decision that is more inclusive and more equitable for more people. And that was not believed in Washington, D.C. And we've now repeated that on healthcare, on economic development, on regional planning issues, on budget priorities. So it's a kind of social capital that exists in our public that our politics does not let emerge.
So because, as you said, the conventional wisdom tends to be that it's an alienated public who has no desire to speak up. But really your experience then is that just they haven't been asked. No one's asked me to talk, no one's put me in a situation where I have a variety of people's opinions around me.
And we also, we got into habit patterns of the way we invited the public in, public meetings, really poorly run town halls, so that when they actually did go to a public event, it was a bad experience. They left feeling not heard, they left feeling like the majority would always rule. So either they never got asked, or when they did try, it was a bad experience. So what has to happen is the government and NGOs need to take more responsibility to create safe public spaces that everybody feels welcome. It doesn't matter if I come from the upper part of town or the lower part of town or an ethnic neighborhood or a mixed neighborhood, that there's public space that we all feel welcome. This is where we go when we want to talk about the issues that we really care about.
In your experience, again, working mostly with the American public, what are some of the very particular techniques, some of the helpful hints, so to say, to help the public we feel welcome, help them feel like, you know, your word matters?
Another great question. The number one thing that has to be visible to the public when you invite them to participate in these policy sessions, it has to be clear to them that the decision maker is going to listen and what they talk about will make a difference. For example, America Speaks ran what we called citizen summits. My home is in Washington, D.C. Washington, D.C. has a population of about 600,000 people. Every 2 years, for 8 years, under Mayor Anthony Williams, we organized citizen summits where somewhere between 3,000 and 4,000 people, demographically representative of the whole city by age, by ethnicity, by geography, by political ward, came together in the convention center. They looked at the mayor's budget, they saw the priorities, and then they collectively said, this is how we would like the priorities to change. Well, that credibility that Mayor Williams was going to listen and that something different would happen after they talked, that's the number one thing that we have to make sure is true when we invite people to participate. The second thing that we have to make sure is true is that they know that they will be supported in the discussion. For example, a lot of times lower income people or single mothers can't afford to take the time to come to this kind of process unless you provide transportation, unless you provide childcare. So we, the government and the NGOs, excuse me, need to think about what are the supports that people need to be able to participate publicly. And then, Lisa, a really critical element. So many times, not just in the United States today, but all over the world, people don't have enough information to participate in these conversations. So we take responsibility for providing a discussion guide and providing little video clips that give people the essential facts, the real information they need. Well, many times I'm asked, what's the hardest part of your work? And honestly, I never know whether to say the hardest part is to create credibility with the public, with the citizens, which we just talked about, or the core of your question now is how do you convince the elected officials, the government system, to take the public's input seriously? And I'll tell you, many of the issues that are facing, it doesn't matter if you're in Europe or in Latin America or in Asia or in the United States, the big issues facing our countries, government can't solve them by themselves. It is going to take real public support to get over the hill on climate change, to get over the hill on health care in our country. So I can say it in one sentence why more politicians and more government agencies in the United States are really embracing this kind of work. What they understand is when the public comes together like this, it creates true public will. So if I'm the politician, I know I'm going to have to run again in 2 years or 4 years or 6 years, but here is a whole community that is committed to the same agenda that I am working for. So in a sentence, why do citizen engagement? Because then you can connect public will with political will, and that's how you create real change in a democracy.